What's good with it in the hood with it? Welcome back to the Collective Clips where you already know we get it in. But before we get it in, let's hit that like and subscribe button. Wait up. Ding. Put your notification bell on also. That way you're directed in the direction of the dope content I am kicking. And I highly appreciate all the support. We're going up on this channel and it's all because of you. And for that, I'm very humbled. Thank you. So I was asked a question, man, and I felt that if for no other reason I should answer it promptly. And the question I was asked was, what happens with Mexican Crips and Bloods in the California prison system? Where do they go? Are there really Mexican Crips and Bloods that choose to go that route while incarcerated in the California prison system? Now, we know the California prison system is very divided amongst racial lines, right? Not racist lines, but racial lines. And let me clarify that, brother, right? Because when people hear racial, they automatically think racist. And there's a big difference. There's people that don't like you for your skin pigmentation, the way you carry yourself, what they think about you. They judge the book by its cover before they even really get to know who the individual is. Those are racist people. People don't like you just because you're something that they are not. Okay? And then they want to go a certain route with that, and they want to just act a fool, and then all of a sudden they're on their pockets and they're going, why, right? Why not? Is the question. That's the true question that you have to answer. But racial lines just means your own kind, your own people, your own ethnicity, your own culture. Okay, so it's not like people hate you because they ain't you. People just stick with their own because it's safer that way. And that's just the fucking way it is. I'm sorry. That's just how it's going to be. That's how it has been. And that's what's probably going to happen in the future. Now, I'm an advocate for everybody getting along and let's cross that threshold of that racial line and let's all be cool. But I'm also of the understanding that in some cases, them politics in prison, that racial division does ease tension, not cause tension. Because, hey, as long as you're chilling with your own people and doing your guys' own thing, there's going to be less issues. There's going to be less people stepping on each other's toes, less drama. And albeit, man, that shouldn't be the way of the world. That just is the way of the world, and you just have to learn to adapt. Now, when it comes to Mexican Crips or Bloods, it's a real tricky situation. Because traditionally, Crips and Bloods have been known to come from, of course, black gangs. You know, when the movie Colors first came out, it didn't matter what race you were, what ethnicity, what culture you supported. All that shit went out the window. Everybody thought they were racket. Give me that rabbit. Give me that rabbit. Everybody thought they were high top. And everybody thought, man, wow, you know what I'm saying? I want to start cripping or I want to start blooding. I can tell you story after story of so many Mexicans in my neighborhood or around the area that all of a sudden had a blue Pendleton on the next day and thought they were fucking rocket, or had a red jersey on and thought they were high top and they were running through an alley. I can tell you so many stories like that, but at the end of the day, that was just a fad. That was just something that happened throughout the state of California, maybe in other states as well, but I can't speak on that. And then all of a sudden, people started to realize, whoa, hold up. What do you mean I got to hang around with the black guys? The guys that weren't doing that didn't understand, hey, if you're going to be a Crip or a Blood, those are predominant black gangs, and you're going to have to go hang out with them and kick it with them and do your thing with them. And then there was a lot of guys that said, no, but what happens when I go to prison? I got to kick it with my own peoples. Well, that's the catch-22 right there. See, that's what you have to figure out on your own. Now, of course, myself, if I was a Crip or I was a Blood, I would be also, whoop, I'd be a Crip or a Blood. And there would be nothing that could change that. There wouldn't be nothing that could sway me from that style because would be my environment. That'd be my geographical situation. That would pretty much be how I grew up. And so I wouldn't know nothing else. So a lot of these Crips and Bloods that are of Mexican descent, that's all they know because that's the area they grew up in. And ain't nothing wrong with that. You know, I've had plenty of Norteño homeboys that were black or Woods, brother, white, right? Coffee? No, we drink coffee too, eh? All right, cool. Well, fuck it then. I could be a Norteño, right? And that's just how that was. But, them guys grew up amongst us. They grew up in that culture. We're talking about the type of white man and the type of black man that are eating tacos over everything. Okay? And we didn't see the color lines. We didn't see the pigmentation of the skin. There was no difference. You know, I told a story a long time ago where I was at a party, a house party, and I had a homeboy. And he was black, right? He was a black homie. We didn't see him that way. Once you became a norteño, you ceased to exist as a color. You were only existing for the cause and as a soldado for the movement. And I remember this chick came running up and she was like, hey, there's black dudes, but she said the N-word, right? They're in the party. And the homie, he's black, and he was like, where them motherfuckers at? Let's get them, right? Again, I tell that story, and I say that to say this. He seen color like from the opposite side. Do you mean? It was weird, right? But I was just like, oh, okay, all right. Well, do your thing, brother, right? Better you than me. But I got you because you're a homie. Look, at the end of the day, it's going to be like that. It's not that they got the game twisted or they're trying to be something they're not. They're just being what they know. Now, as far as Mexican Crips and Bloods, there are Mexican Crips and Bloods incarcerated in the California system. That's an absolute fact. Very few and far between. There's not a lot, but there are. Okay, I've known gangs that comprised all Mexicans, all Asians, all whites that consider themselves Crips or Bloods. Now, traditionally, we know that the Crip movement was started in the Los Angeles area, and it was mostly predominantly black. It was a community, not a gang, but a group that started, for the same thing every other gang starts from, to protect their own from, of course, oppression. And they were being racially profiled. And there was a lot of racist things happening in them times. And they came together to protect their neighborhoods, to protect themselves, and to get social status of equality. And then, of course, the Sangres, being the Bloods, they sprang up as well around the same time or a little bit after. And they were in opposition of some of the Crips and what they had going on. Now, there was a lot going on with the black and brown movements. Even prior to that, there was a lot during the civil rights movement. There was a lot of black and brown together. A lot of the Chicanos fighting for them rights and a lot of the blacks fighting for them rights. And believe it or not, they fought side by side. In a lot of instances, they marched together for the betterment of their people. Somewhere along the lines got crossed and they went their own separate ways. And that's where a lot of the drama and a lot of the things started. You see, a lot of the gangs brought tension. They brought tension because it was neighborhood versus neighborhood, barrio versus barrio, turf versus turf, and the element of people that were involved, I wouldn't necessarily say that they were the smartest individuals, but they were individuals that all they cared about was their own. So lines were drawn in the sand, people were divided, and it's unfortunate it had to be that way, but that's the honest to God truth. Prior and pre-gangs, and let me tell you something, groups and gangs and barrios have been around forever, hundreds of years. But it wasn't as flamboyant and as mainstream as it is now. We didn't hear about it back then. If you were from a particular neighborhood and you joined a social club or a group or a gang, a gaggle, whatever you wanted to call it, then of course you fought amongst your own people and you fought for your people. Like I said, then in about I'd say the 70s, 80s, that's when gangs started to take a different type of turn and a twist, and it went crazy. The world went crazy back in 1985. I remember when rock cocaine used to be a rich man's. Okay, you already know what it is. So, Crips and Bloods in the California prison system, what happens to them if they're Mexican? Well, I'm going to tell you, they go with the blacks. That's what happens with them. And they're not going to be touched on. They're not going to be ridiculed. They're not going to be slandered. They're not going to be disrespected because they fuck with their people. See, they choose the gang and what they know over their ethnicity and their culture. Now, some people don't like that. Okay? That's like a white man going into the prison system as a Crip or as a Blood. He has to be Teflon Don. He has to be extra hardcore. Brother, he has to drink more coffee than anyone else. Because at the end of the day, the Woods are going to trip. Oh, yes, indeedy. I write graffiti. They're going to trip all over that white man. But it always boggled my mind, if a white guy goes into prison as a Norteño or a Southsider, well, the Woods are like, brother, we're not going to trip on the essays, right? And I think that's just more so the black and white issue. Okay, let's just be cut and dry. No added preservatives here. Let's be real. Because that's hypocritical to trip if a white wants to join a black gang or be a part of a black movement. You're all on his motherfucking headpiece. You're breathing down the back of his neck like a motherfucking dragon in the Game of Thrones, right? You're tripping, but you're not tripping off a white being from a Mexican gang. That's just racial. right there. That's just what the cut and dry, that's what that is. And I understand, man. And it's not that they fucking just hate it. It's to hate the fact that, you know, they lost a soldier. They lost one of their own. They feel like this guy is blatantly disrespecting them by turning his back on the people of like-mindedness, of the same skin colorness, of, you know, their gente. Now, when it comes to the Mexicans, it's a little bit of a different story. If there's a Mexican Crip or Blood, that's on him, eh? If that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do. Now, where it gets tricky is if something goes on in a racial capacity where it's Mexicans versus blacks, Norteños versus blacks. And when I say blacks, man, you got to understand the blacks are comprised of Muslims, Kumis, non-affiliates, Crips, Bloods. So usually when it pops off, it's personal, okay? It's within groups. When you think black don't, and they say, oh, the blacks are going to riot against the Mexicans, it's not all. There's some that it's not their business. If it's Crips that are involved with Southsiders, then most of the time it's going to be Crips and Southsiders that get off. Or Crips and Northerners or whatever. Every group is divided. They do their own thing. Now, the only time it becomes something of a racial capacity where it's black and brown totally, the whole cars are going at it, is when it becomes that. When there's disrespect towards the skin tone or the ethnicity or the culture, then the brothers will come together. But for the most part, the Bloods will be like, on Paru! That's Crip business, man. We ain't involved in that. Now, of course, a brother's not going to see another brother getting jumped by a whole bunch of Mexicans or whites. He's going to be obligated to back his people in his play. And I'm going to tell you guys a story about a Mexican Crip right now and how his people failed him miserably. But trip out on this. So where it gets tricky is if the Mexican Crip or Blood goes into the California prison system and wants to basically put his culture in the background and claim Crips or Bloods, that's fine. He chose his gang. He chose his people. So now you're with them people. Them people, like I'm being racist, right? You're with them. Go be with them. There's not a problem. They're not going to have an issue. Now, if they flip-flopped, if they were trying to be a Southsider or a Norteño back in the days and their filth is recognized and now they're switching up for safety purposes, oh yeah, they're going to be taxed, touched, and hurt pretty efficiently, right? And it's going to set off some shit in motion because the brothers ain't going to go out like that. They're going to back his play, and then that's where it becomes an issue. But look, if there's, say, a North on Crip thing and there's a Mexican Crip, okay, first and foremost, he's going to back the blacks up 100%. He's going to get off with the Cripas because that's his thing, okay? And best believe he's going to be the very first fucking target. And the reason he's going to be targeted is because there's always going to be that tension there. Hey, this Volta fucking is faking the funk. This Volta should have been one of us. And that's just the bias, man. He's not faking the funk. He really is what he is. That's all he knows. I've known a couple homeboys, man. And when I say homeboys, I'm just saying Mexicanos that were good friends of mine that were Crips. There's one, his name's Tal Rivera, Bullet from Merced Gangsta Crip, who's actually on death row, you know, for killing a police officer in the city of Merced. It's a very well-known case. That's real Crippin' right there. That's Crippin' on top of Crippin'. That guy's in the motherfucking pool giving Crip and playing chicken fights with Crip. He's real shit. He's the real life, the real deal. That's what he's known. That's what he was known for. And he wasn't hated on. He was well respected because he'll fucking pop your top quick. Okay, but if something pops off, this guy got to understand, man, that, you know, he has to go against his own culture, his own race. And that can get real tricky and that can get real dangerous because people are automatically going to target him. That's just like, you know, the Woods getting into it with the blacks and there's a white Crip or a white Blood. He's going to be the first one they're trying to take off on because they're still going to have that little bit of hate, you know, in them. Like, oh, this dude wants to go again. He wants to touch another white man. Oh, hell no, brother. Right? They're going to trip. You know, you're going to, oh, get them. Right? And the whites are going to go crazy. It's just what it is. And the blacks are not going to bow down. But I'm going to tell you guys about a situation about a Mexican Crip, man, that came up short on all accounts. So this guy gets to the yard, and you could tell by the way he carried himself what it was. He was sagging a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to say the blacks have that look, but the blacks have that look, right? And he had his shit corn rolled up, and he was moving smooth. And he was a cool dude, cool as fuck. I remember, man, he was from a Northern California city. I forget exactly where he was from, but he was Crippin' to the highest level of Crippin', right? And he was from a well-known hood, and he had a couple homeboys on that yard, and they knew him from the streets, so it wasn't like he was faking the funk. He wasn't perpetrating. He wasn't a wannabe. He wasn't a wankster. He wasn't a Ja Rule to a 50 Cent, right? He was a real one. And so he got in there, and of course, a lot of the homeboys from his town that were there, he was from Stockton, right? They actually knew him. They knew him from the fucking county jails. They knew him from being in Tracy. They knew who this guy was. This was real Crippin' right here. So they're like, hey, what's up, bro? There was a lot of interaction. Remember, the Norteños functioned on the same side of the yard as him. Okay, so what had happened was he gets there, he's kicking it with the Crips, whatever, everything's good. Well, one thing about him was he had primos that were Southerners. They were Southsiders from Stockton. Okay, so he felt like, I guess, compelled to be cool with the Southsiders and try to talk to him in the school area or during work time or whatever he was doing. He felt like, you know, there was a kinship there because all his family were Southerners, even though he was a Crip. He went that route. Okay, so he had a lot of interaction with them and started to do some undercover business with them, which he should have never done because, again, the Southerners, the Southsiders, and the blacks don't do too much business unless it's behind the scenes. That can get you caught up very quick within that movement, right? But he was doing his thing, and no one's going to tell him what to do. Again, it was none of our business. We were from the outside looking in, seeing it, like, whatever. If he wants to deal with them vatos, let him deal with them vatos. We already know how they get down, man. If you try to play them out of pocket, they're going to fucking kill everything on this yard. It's just how the Southsiders roll. And, of course, he disrespected someone by not paying him on time. And that's one of the biggest things that you can't do in prison is not pay someone on time. If you say, hey, I got you first draw, you better have them on half a first draw. If you say, hey, I got you with a jar of Folgers, brother, it better fucking not be Keefy, right? It better be what they want. Be a man of your word. Be true to your word. That's all you have. Or you won't have no words at all. Or breath. They'll take your wind. So he got into some type of argument, man. And this was a kind of a bigger dude, stocky, a little flamboyant with his business. And he pushed a Southerner. He put his hands on another Mexican. But you got to understand, he was not considered Mexican anymore. He was considered black. He was considered a Crip. And that's the way you roll. That's how you're going to roll. And you don't push another man in prison. You don't do none of that. You better, right? You just don't do it. That's disrespect to the highest level. And he chose to do that. And so now it was on, man. The Southsiders fucking rushed right there. Okay, which is what they should do. They were disrespect. They got off where they were mad at. And a few of the Crips came to back his play. And that was that. Well, when they went to the back to the hole, the Crips got in his earlobes and found out what he did. And it was his fault for being involved in doing business on that level with them guys. So the Crips backed up off of him. So now what you had is this guy going back to the yard. Okay. All point bulletin. Now there's tension between the Crips and there's tension between the Southerners. Oh, them the wrong brothers to fuck with, right? And now you have this guy who's on Gilligan's Island by himself. Now the Crips ain't backing him up. Now he's Mexican. Now get your Mexican ass over there, right? And so what does he do? He comes out and he tries to plea bargain with the Southsiders, and they carved him up real nice, and there wasn't a Crip in sight to back his play. They let him go. That wasn't a situation of how the Crips react and let people get down, because they back their play. They back their people's play no matter what race and what ethnicity you are. They don't play that shit. Crippin' is crippin'. But that was a situation where he fucked up, and he found out truly that, hey, you can't be what you think you want to be, right? You got to be what you should be. And the Mexicans got off on him, and that was that for him. I tell you that to say this. When Mexican Crips or Bloods get locked up in the California system, they have a hard road. Okay, anytime you're from a different ethnicity and you're joining a different gang that's predominantly one, you're going to have a hard road. You know, people ask me as well, what about the Asian Crips and the Asian Bloods? Let me tell you about the Asian Crips and Asian Bloods. I got a lot of respect, a lot of love for the Asians. But most of them, 99% of the Asians, as soon as they get locked up at that threshold, at that gate, they let the Crippin' and the Blooding go, and they go with the others. They go with their own people. They fight for their own. Okay, they draw that racial line, and they're going to rock Asian. Don't matter if it's Cambodian, Laos, Vietnamese. That's just how they're going to go with their gente, with their people. Same thing with the Usos. There's a lot of Usos. Now, there are some that will go Crip and Blood, and they kick it with the blacks, but the majority of them are going to be about their people. They're going to be with the islands, right? And that's it. Polynesian power. Okay, now, if you're white and you're a Crip or Blood, you better go with the Crips and Bloods, because the Woods ain't going to accept. No, brother. No, brother. How many jars of coffee did you say? 5? Could we let it go for 5? They ain't going to let it go for 5 nor 6 or 7. If you fucking go in there and you were found out to be cripping and blooding on the streets and now you want to change to be a wood, don't let the skins find that out, because they're going to trip, especially if you have tattoos, indicators that you were doing that. They're going to feel some type of way. They're going to feel like you're dicked up. They can't eat after you and whatever. They're going to do their thing. Now, with the norteños, I'm not going to lie. I've had homeboys that during the colors era were cripping and blooding, or thought they were. And then they quickly realized that wasn't for them, and then they got into the fold, and they became homeboys. I'm sure the Southerners have some of the same things going on, where vatos used to be cripas back in the days, or bloods, and then they chose up. They're like, later on, they got involved in a barrio and became, Southern Mexicans. That's just how it is, the raza. But, as far as what happens with Mexican Crips and Bloods in the California prison system, they hold their own. I've been on plenty of yards with vatos that were Mexican Crips or Bloods. Very respectful. We function on the same side of the yard. Hey, I already knew what time it was. They're going to get off just like any other man. Ain't no difference. A pigmentation of skin doesn't change the way a motherfucker rocks. It's the mentality of a person. I've seen the most vicious dudes on the yard, and I've seen the most clumsiest suckerfish dudes on the yard. It's all about your mentality and how you carry yourself. You will gain respect on that yard if you earn it. If you're respectful to other people, they have no choice but to be respectful to you. If someone trips on you because you want to be a Crip or Blood in your Mexican homes, well, then let's get to tripping. That's it. That's just how that goes. Anyways, with that being said, I hope I answered that question on what happens to Mexican Crips and Bloods. There has been situations where people trip, but that's more so a personal thing because they got an issue. I remember there was this one Blood, and man, these brothers kept coming in and they were his enemies, and he kept taking the fades. That's one thing about the black movement, the blacks, period, Crips, Bloods. They'll catch that fade with their enemigo. With their enemy, they'll catch that fade all day, every day, right? But he just kept having enemies, man. And eventually he got at, the paisas and was like, man, my whole family's Mexicano. I'm trying to wig, man. These vatos fucking taking advantage because they were just beating him up. And the paisa said, chale, no, porque tú es un pinche sangre. ¿Sabes qué? Verga. Right? No, they didn't want no part of that. And so you got to understand, when you go into prison, that license, that licencia, that fucking ID that you show everyone, and that's your gang. When you tell them, hey, I'm from here, you're from there, bro. And you will always be from there. You can't change up later on. You can go onto the SY yard and drop out and then fucking be whatever you want to be. But while you're in general population, that motherfucking license you walked in with, your paperwork that says you're a Crip, a Blood, a North, a South, a Bulldog, whatever it is, that's what you are forever, bro. And believe me, there's going to be people on other yards that recognize your filth from other fucking places. So don't think that you can just go to another yard and switch up. Yeah, over there, like, yeah, bro. No, I was a Crip over there. Over here, I'm a skinhead, brother. Nope, doesn't work that way. Okay, with that being said, hope that you move smooth with a purpose. Get everything that you want coming. And remember, at the end of the day, it's all about the strive, the struggle, the struggle, the strive. I tell these stories not to glorify prison, but to answer the questions that you ask me. Shout out respects to all the Mexican Crips and Bloods. They walk a cold path in prison, and I commend them for holding true to their thing. But at the end of the day, it can get very tricky. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I honestly and truly believe in, and that's the betterment of all people. No matter the color, no matter the ethnicity, we're all one race, the humans. No matter what, we all go through oppression. We all go through bullshit, man. Yeah, it stinks. The gun. Bang, bang.